Hello there. I'm Joe Weston, and this is our monthly global heart gathering. And this time I'm actually in Dubai, the United Arab Emirates. And who knew? I didn't, but here I am. And it's so good to be here. I love the fact that we're weaving this heart energy and that I'm just taking different places as part of that weave. And I just want to mention, not that it needs to be about me, but the journey that I've taken. That January, I did the Global Heart Gathering in Washington, D.C. In February, I did it in Rotterdam, the Netherlands. In March, I did it in Milano, Italia. In April, I did it in Amsterdam, the Netherlands. And now I'm doing it from Dubai. So here we are.
And what's
And
next, Joe?
who knows? I'm waiting for the moment that I can do it on the moon. That's what I'm waiting for. I want to open up a karaoke bar on the moon, but that's a whole other conversation. Here we are. Um, and as always, we're here to gather in heart connection, uh, to hold space for ourselves, for each other, to generate this practice of resilience and fierce compassion. And interestingly enough, in more conversations with people who are also on their own getting this idea of who are the midwives of our time that are helping us with old systems that are dying away and new systems that are already born or are being born. And that on some level, what a great gift we can be to the human family and to the whole planet if we can, just like a doula or a midwife, keep ourselves regulated, have radical presence, have radical compassion when others are in terror or we're never going to get through this, that we can hold that space to love them and support them and know that there is something on the other side. We may not know what it is, but there is something on the other side, and that we can take care of ourselves in that we can be engaged in the process without being necessarily dysregulated and caught up in the process from a dysregulated place. And it's always an honor to be around people who share strong values. For those of you who show up on a regular basis or once or twice, either here with us on the World Wide Web or from your own place, acupuncture point on the planet, and holding space with us as we weave this golden thread of peace around the world, lasting peace. It's really an honor. And I've been in a reflective place on many levels. I want to share a little bit of bad news from something that happened with me. It wasn't bad news for me, but someone tragic in my life. I shared it on Facebook. And many of you know that I've done a lot of work in Gaza, in the Middle East in general, in different places in the Middle East, working specifically with women's rights organizations and humanitarian organizations. And I've developed some really close relationships with people in the region. And specifically, I've worked the longest with a group in Gaza. I actually started with them in 2016. It was a women's rights organization, and it was made up of not only women, but men who have chosen, successful men in their careers, who chose to volunteer to be ambassadors, to engage with other men, to talk to them about helping them shift their viewpoints on women and girls. And I can't tell you the honor I had. Some of you here may have actually met them, to have worked with them. And these are relatively, from my perspective, I would say young men. I remember when I was going through their CVs that the oldest man involved was born in 1978. So that goes to show you what was emerging and brewing in Gaza at this time, a real sense of renewal. And I worked with them since 2016 and developed deep heart connection with them, what I would call friends, and learning about their families. And unfortunately, I found out this week that one of them passed away, Haitham Ajij, and that he actually passed away because I have other friends who have had family members who died in bombardments and things like that. but he had severe celiac disease, which means he had a severe gluten allergy. And he basically starved to death because he couldn't get the foods that he needed anymore to sustain him. And it broke my heart. He's a sweetheart. I actually want to show a picture, if you don't mind to indulge me in this. I want to show, let me see, how do I? Let's see if I do, how do I do this? This is Hytham. And I remember him as being a generous man, a very intelligent man, a very compassionate man, who, as I said, devoted his life. And he and his other colleagues were infiltrating every sector along with their busy lives to, again, to help people understand how to cultivate resilience and shift their viewpoints and their habits about how men are treating women and girls. This is actually a sweet one. It's not a year ago, it's a while ago. This is him teaching my methodology. Oh, I didn't say that he's also a respectful confrontation certified trainer, as is the other men and women. And that's him. For those of you who know my workshop, you might place which part of the workshop that is, the iceberg model. And I just wanted to share that and just share what I'm experiencing with that, and to just to acknowledge that on this, that there are many people who suffer from a severe gluten allergy. And to me, that his death was so normal in the sense that, again, it wasn't him dying in a bombing or anything severe like that. It was, of course, it was severe, but it was something that many of us suffer from on a regular basis, celiac disease. And I have been talking to people, and I've been just watching them and just checking, oh, I have a gluten allergy, or I have this, or I rely on this medication. And I bring it up to help us bring it home more, how reliant we are on systems, and that the everyday normal things are so crucial, and how much we rely on those symptoms. So I want to bring him into this and hold this, and I'm sure you have stories of people you know, and there are more stories, of course. But I bring this up, and I've been thinking about this, and I'm sure I've shared this before about a situation I have, which is directly related to this work that we're doing here. What will it take for us to really step into this moment, to see that all the things we are facing, that they're tragic and they're frightening, but to also look at it, I said this at the beginning of the year, what if this has been set up for us to actually have the capacity to step into more of our gifts and more of our capacity? That on some level, the extremes around us are going to are forcing us to recognize talents and courage and powers we don't even know we have yet. And what will it take for us to step into that? And the practice we do on a regular basis is this idea of what is compassion in action? How do we take our highest ideals of love and compassion, of a peaceful world, of a just world, of an equitable world? How do we contemplate on a deeper level and have the courageous self-reflection to see where we are stopping that because of our own conditioning, because of our limited view of reality, because of our fears, areas that we have not integrated into ourselves, and how do we then take that into action to be able to move through the world spontaneously from a place of compassion. And the example that I give is, I remember years ago when I was living in Amsterdam still, and I was teaching a workshop in a studio space that was in the middle of a residential area. And I remember we were in the middle of a process. We were actually discussing what was going on. And suddenly there was a baby crying out on a balcony. We couldn't see the baby, but we heard the baby. And that baby wasn't just crying, that baby was wailing, screeching. And it went on and it went on and it went on. And I started getting really dysregulated because I really felt from my own compassion and action, something must be done. We should at least check to see what's happening. But what I tracked is that there were three levels. There was me who was feeling agitated that this was happening because I felt like this child was suffering and maybe something needed to be done. There were other people in the room who didn't even notice the screeching. And there was one woman who sat, and I can feel her body getting tighter and tighter. And she screamed at the top of her lungs and bolted out of that room to see what was happening. And that for me is an interesting reflection of what level are we at in what's happening in the world today without judgment. I ask us to evaluate and assess and not judge. But where are we in that? Or we can look at the world. Because if the world were more like this woman, I would say it would be a very different world. If the world were more like me, and I'm not even there yet, where I spontaneously got up and tried to alleviate the suffering, we would have a different world. What I think is unfortunate, many of us are stuck in the phase of not even noticing the screeching or registering crying baby, but not really tapping into and being able to feel what the consequences are, considering that maybe we, you, us, them could actually help solve the problem. And again, I ask you to look at that from your own perspective. Where are you in that process? And what is, and because I think that what we're seeing now is that we're in a place where many of us may need to be called to a higher level of engagement. And, you know, in the work I do with Fear Civility, you know, I talk about the four breakdowns: breakdown of civic engagement. No, I gave it away. Oops. Of civil discourse, of personal agency, of independent critical thinking. That's what we're seeing play out, and civic engagement. And what will it take for more of us to remember that a democracy can only thrive if there's civic engagement, if people are working towards that democracy. I just I was at a conference in the south of Italy where the Supranational Democracy Conference, where with scholars and people involved specifically with the European Commission about what's at stake for our democracy and what does it take from a policy level to maintain that democracy. And my contribution was, what are we going to do to activate more people, appeal to the heart, to get more citizens engaged in that process? And again, I try to say this with assessment and not judgment. I think it's crucial. And I've been saying that when you look at, you know, elections and things like that, you know, a lot of our culture, certainly American culture, we become the lands of consumerism, where we're used to being in a culture where we can always have some kind of device or some kind of group that will take care of the issue. And again, what will it take for us to realize that may not be working effectively, and what will get us to step into a deeper level of civic engagement? And I'm curious, if I were to ask you to unmute, to just say, I mean, what are you seeing playing out? Where do you think we are at this moment in terms of the urgency of people engaging more? I
Joe,
know Lou has a lot, I'm sure has a lot to say about that.
I'm the screaming lady. And we're doing another march here in Pocatello on Saturday, and I am following Rivera's son, who's just got nominated and had her portrait added to the People Who Speak the Truth organization. And she's amazing about nonviolent techniques and what we can do. And
Right.
So I'm just like reading all her stuff and showing up for everything I can. We had a really interesting meeting here in Pocatello. It was an empty chair conversation. About 60 people showed up
Yeah.
to speak to the representatives um, that are from Idaho, and the Republican representatives, none of them showed up. The one Democratic representative did. And that was a pretty powerful experience. And I keep following the rules on making the 5 calls and doing whatever I can. But
Yeah.
I feel like the screaming lady, I'm just like, I'm over this stuff.
Yeah. You are the screaming lady. I would say you're definitely there. And
Yeah,
thank you for that. Thank you for that. I mean, you've not just the last few years, but for quite a long time now.
yeah, and
At
I'll
least
own
that's
that.
that's
I
my
mean, I feel
good.
like there's a lot of wonderful people that hold a more neutral place, but but that doesn't help when there's so many people out there that are just got their heads in the sand. And
Yeah.
I feel like somebody has to like keep saying things a little bit louder.
Well, and I think that's key because you and I were in a little dialogue on social media is like, how do we voices get louder without contributing to the noise or the polarization or the anger or the separation and the breakdown of relationship? That's the challenge. But there's a different, but I guess the question is what's at stake, not talking at all or being somehow engaged in that discussion.
Yeah, and I
Thank
think
you,
that
though. Yeah.
putting facts out there matter. If there's really truth going on, I think it has to be out there, even if it sounds like crazy and mad sometimes. If it's facts, I want it out there.
Yeah.
One of the ways I'm responding, the idea of being a spectator and a bystander is unacceptable for me. And in Washington, we now have 80,000 unemployed federal workers or people working in nonprofits who got federal grants. And so many of us who are in the executive coaching field have offered free coaching services because the mental health, I really do think, Joe, that the level of what's happening is so severe that the country is going to evolve in a way that's entirely shaped by these kinds of stresses. So being able to step in and have a positive approach and say to people who were thrown out of their offices, let's take this as an opportunity to step back and revisit why you were doing the work you were doing, and then have the opportunity to reposition and then support that person in the search. It's so hard to be just standing by. So that's what I'm doing.
Yeah, and we can hear from it, but both what you're doing, and this is what what I want to get to, is that you're creating opportunity. You're creating possibilities, you're creating hope, and you're creating opportunities. And that's generative. And and that's already a huge task, right? So opening the door for someone to go in and clean it, those are two different tasks. That maybe if the door wasn't opening, the room wouldn't be clean. So just the act of opening the door and then you walk away, you didn't clean it, but you had your purpose. So to at this time, I'm always trying to think, what could someone do? It may not be solving the problem yourself, but right now, the more we can create fields of hope and possibility and opportunity for connection, for having people feel they belong, for nervous system regulation. Because I would say that on some level, that is very crucial right now because of people who are so separate and finding it hard to engage. And then the ideas of what's going to move us through this, they may not, they're ready to be born or they're born, but they're ready to be manifested. So how do we create the context for that to be manifested? Thank you. Who else? I see Tim has his. Hi, Tim.
Joe and everyone here. It's so good to see you all. It's been so long, and it's
Yeah.
good to be joining you. I was just going to add, the work that I've been doing around racial equity and social justice with the Groundwater Institute and Racial Equity Institute, more recently, CARA, the California Anti-Racism Alliance. Um, we often say that, it's so important to stay hopeful in this work if we're going to be coming off our own porches and getting into it more than just as actors, but allies and hopefully accomplices, and that just the the um, the act of action, getting involved, is one way to stay hopeful and to help with that regulation, so to speak. Brian Stevenson often talks about his 4 principles, and stay hopeful is such an important part of that. And Joe, you mentioned the conference. There's one coming up in June that's quite interesting, the 22nd Century Initiative. Scott Nakagawa and his team at associated with that initiative, June 18th through the 22nd in Atlanta. I think they're expecting over 1,000 people to talk about exactly this topic.
Yeah.
I'll be there.
Beautiful. Thank you. Of course you will. Thank you. Anyone else? And if you don't, not doing anything specifically, any thoughts on why it's essential? What, Okay. Again, this for me is the issue of our time, and I'm trying to support people, and there's always something that can be done, and we've already looked at that every day. There's a way of generating what I call fierce hope, and how do we get it? How do we create the spaces where people can gather? Or how are we aware of where there is suffering and to see where we can be of service? And one thing I think talk about in the Fierce Civility work is the idea of what is really civility, a redefinition. And on some level, it's coming from what I would call our 5 highest common principles or values. And I've talked about them before, which is respect, value, dignity, feeling valued, belonging, freedom, and collaboration. And that to me is a blueprint of, I can start with myself, how do I access respect? How do I access a sense of dignity, that I matter? How do I access belonging, freedom, and collaboration? And I would say that I mature within myself, because many of us can get stuck in that. A lot of what we're seeing is what I would call an adolescent way of approaching that. I need respect. I need to belong. I need dignity. I need freedom. I need to collaborate. But the people in our lives, and particularly people who may not resonate with our values, how do we create situations where they can feel respect, where they can feel dignity and belonging and a sense of freedom and a feeling that they can collaborate? And I would say collaborate in this context is that their voice matters or their input matters. And I would say the highest level of activation of that is when you create alliances with people who are creating systems, not just individual. Systems that are built into constitutions or are built into policies that foster respect, dignity, belonging, freedom, and collaboration. And there are many people I know, Angel Kyoto Williams talks about this and many others that say, I can't be free if you're not free. And that brings us back to that interconnectedness. How can I fully relax? Well, we can relax, I shouldn't say that. But when do I feel my work is done when there is still suffering on the planet, when there are others who aren't free? And I'm not saying anything you don't already know. I just want to bring this into the context. It's alive for me because it's been a struggle for me in terms of what's been happening in Gaza. I'm engaged emotionally with these people. I try to offer support in these very small, itsy bitsy ways that I can to be emotional support for them and be resilient. And there are times when I cry at night, wishing there's more that I could do. And I have to also have compassion for myself and say, this is where I am. Same thing with the situation with the screaming woman. I wasn't that far in my development to be the woman, the person who stood up screeching and going out and actively taking care of that baby. I'd like to believe I was far enough that I was still aware of it and still felt something needed to be done. And wherever we are is where we are. And I think that this practice that we do on a monthly basis, on a regular basis, can support us in that. So that's a good segue into doing our practice, unless there's someone who wants to say anything around that. At this point, Deborah?
I was struck when you said, having that thought, something needs to be done. And one of my teachers said that he had that thought about landmines and in Vietnam, long after the war, kids still being blown up, losing fingers, limbs. And he said, something ought to be done about this. And then as he said it out loud, he went, oh, shit. Because that means it's my job to do something about this. If I feel that passionate about it, that's my job. So I try to be very careful with that phrase. But yes, it comes up. Something ought to be done about this. And it doesn't mean I have to do the whole thing. It might be that there's one phone call for me to make. Or but do it. Do my piece. And recognize, and it's hard, recognize that if my piece is just one phone call, that I did enough.
Thank you. Yeah, and the image, I go back to this idea, it wasn't the strongest metaphor, but you know, when you think of it, when a building is burning, what I find often we see happening, I think that's what we saw happening with some of the issues. The bigger issues at this moment is that while the building is still burning, people are yelling in the building, in the burning building, yelling, who caused it? And I would say, let's first take care of the people who are alive, get them out to safety. Let's honor those who have died, and let's put out the fire, and then we can evaluate. So I might not be the one putting out the fire, but I could be the one consoling someone who lost someone, right? So we all have our part, is how I take what you're saying, Deborah, some levels.
I struggle
George?
with a piece of what you just said, because in this case, what it feels like here in the United States is that you can't really put out the fire when there's people bombing and firing and putting more fire on it. And I think that there has to be a focus on stopping those people that are creating the fire, as well as helping those people that have been burned. If we don't stop the fire, it won't matter how many people are getting burned. We won't be able to keep up.
Yeah. Well, I see it the same way. Like for me, you got to put out the fire. What I was talking about is the intellect, not the intellectual, the discussion about who's the cause of that. So in the cause of that, yes, that's important so that the problem doesn't come back. But in that moment, you first got to put out the fire.
The problem is active. It's not something that will come back. It's not, I mean, the cause of it is an active cause. So you have to like stop the cause, or you can't put out the fire. And so you have to focus on what's causing it and who might be causing it. And I think that's really significant.
Yes. George?
Just some of the stuff I've been doing, I've become very aware of the interlocking systems of inequity. And I think that those systems are part of what's allowing this to happen, because people already feel disenfranchised. And it's going to require tearing down those systems to hand people back the I'm searching for a word, the ability to do something, the agency.
Agency.
Yes, to hand people back the agency that is really their birthright, and with the promise that in the future, the systems of oppression will at least be lessened and their opportunities will be greater.
Thank you. Okay, well, a rich discussion. Let's take this into our practice. Yeah. So as always, there's no right way to do this practice. There's no wrong way to do this. It's about finding your way. And the purpose of this is that within ourselves, we embody this idea of fierce compassion and resilience so that we are more resourceful in our capacity to be of service, that we actually cultivate and increase our sustainability, and that we can weather the storms and be around for quite a long time to be of service, if this is our choice. And that we provide refuge and safety for others as well. So as always, coming into power sit, where your spine is straight without being rigid, elongating from the back of your neck, maybe tucking in your chin a little bit, relaxing your shoulders, relaxing your belly, relax your jaw. Coming in contact with your core and your lower belly, which is approximately the width of 3 fingers below your navel and a third of the way into the body from the front of the body. Bringing your full attention to that spot in your lower belly, center of gravity, impulse, personal power, and awareness. We can move through the world with presence, awareness, balance, and flow when we can bring into alignment our core, and our lower belly, our heart, and our brain. And to bring that more into alignment, since many of us are already very, very skilled, I don't know if skilled is the right word, but practiced in using our intellect and our minds. By focusing in our core and a level of awareness, we come into a deeper presence and integration. From your center, become aware of your contact points, the parts of your body that are connecting with what you're sitting on and the ground. Those parts of your body register through the neurons, through the nerve endings, the stability under you, communicating to your brain that it can activate the proper hormones to allow the body to relax and be held. This in itself is a huge practice for yourself and for others, is to remember what it's like to be held. Using the ground as a representation of Mother Earth, feeling the ground and the grounds beneath you, honoring lands that you are on, wherever you are in this moment, that acupuncture point on the planet. Feeling resources of Mother Earth beneath you. Using this practice again to come into a deeper level of the presence, beginning with yourself. So from your center, become aware of your physical body. Simply listen. Cultivating a deeper relationship and learning the vocabulary of the body, where wisdom resides. What are you sensing in your body? Temperature. Simply noticing. From your center, become aware of your emotional body. Emotions are you present to? The quicker you can track your emotions in any situation, the more agency and choice you have in which directions you may go in a conversation or moving through the world. Giving you back the power in a regulated state. Simply now cultivating that sense of noticing and listening without judgment. From your center, become aware of your mental body, your thoughts. Not necessarily what you're thinking, but the quality of your thoughts. Again, how might they be serving you in this moment? How might they be just distracting you? And recognizing that there's a part of you that is observing your thoughts, meaning that there's a part of you that isn't your thoughts. And maybe cultivating a deeper curiosity of that part of you that isn't your thoughts, building relationship. From your maintaining a connection with your core, your personal power, now bringing awareness to the middle of your chest, your heart center, where your heart power resides. Compassion, respect, your highest values, connection. And in this moment, from your center and from your heart, become aware of that part of you that has connection to something larger than yourself. For whatever that means for you. Where respect resides, where dignity resides, where belonging resides, where freedom resides, where collaboration or true oneness resides. Part of you that's connecting to something larger than yourself. And in this moment, what is your connection to something larger than yourself? There's no test, there's no judgment, it's simply an assessment. From one moment to the next, it could be stronger or weaker. And how does that inspire you? Allowing Mother Earth to flow up through you from underneath, your connection with the earth, and that which is larger than yourself flowing into your heart. How does that energize you? How does that integrate you? How does that frighten you? And allowing this energy from your heart and from your core to radiate out now, filling your personal space in all directions, behind you, to the sides of you, above you, right up and out until the edges of your personal boundaries. Opening your full awareness from your core and from your heart of your own personal self, your own personal space. And with this awareness, take a full breath in through your nose, out through your mouth. And building your awareness of this present moment, maintaining your connection with yourself. And now from your center and from your heart, become aware of your surroundings, the room you're in, the space you're in, on the other side of your personal boundaries. cultivating relationship with the context within which you're in right now, and how that context, that surroundings may be influencing you in relationship with. So cultivating a resilient and dynamic relationship with yourself, cultivating a resilient and dynamic relationship with your surroundings. And with this awareness from your center and from your heart, take a full breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. And extending this out, your awareness of the present moment from your center and from your heart, maintaining connection with yourself and your surroundings. Now become aware of those who are sharing this space with you in this meditation circle in various parts of the world, either joining us on the World Wide Web or joining us in their own way in their hearts, various parts of North America and Europe and other parts of the world, in the Middle East. Stretching the capacity of your heart to make that connection and your personal power to cultivate a dynamic and resilient relationship with those who share this space of cultivating awareness of the global heart. Noticing how others might be impacting you in this moment and how you are impacting them. And with this awareness of yourself, your surroundings, and those in this meditation circle from your center and from your heart, take a full breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. And continuing this practice of stretching the capacity of our hearts from your center and from your heart, become aware of all human beings, beginning with those human beings you would label loved ones. And who arises in your heart? What faces do you see? Groups of people? Surprise yourself. How many can you hold in your heart of people that you would identify as loved one, as ally, as friend, co-worker, family, teacher, student? How does that influence your capacity to open your heart and to stand more in your personal power? How much are you in a resilient and dynamic relationship with everyone that you've called into your heart in your category of loved ones? Could it be less? Could it be more? You don't need to, again, there's no judgment. It's just whatever arises, your heart's desire, whatever pops into your heart as an answer, that's your wisdom. And from your center and from your heart, becoming aware of those human beings you would label stranger. And who arises in your heart? What groups of people do you see in faces? Close by, a neighbor, someone across the other side of the planet. How many can you hold in your heart? Of the almost 8 billion is my assumption. Stretching the capacity of your heart without overstretching. Who is being called in your heart right now? And assessing what is your level of dynamic and resilient relationship with them. What is your heart saying? Could it be more? Could it be less? Just gather the information. Noticing how it affects the level of open-heartedness, or how much you can stand in your personal power in this moment. And from your center and from your heart, becoming aware of those human beings you would label adversary, and spontaneously who arises in your heart. What faces do you see? Groups of people? How many can you hold in your heart or are willing to hold in your heart, if any? How does that affect your level of open-heartedness and your capacity to stand in your personal power? In what way in this moment are you or can you be in a dynamic and resilient relationship with them? Would you see the benefits of being more of that, of there being more of that? Would you see the benefits of there being less of that? No right answer, no wrong answer. Noticing how that's affecting your open-heartedness, your sense of personal power. And as you hold all human beings in your heart right now, regardless of how you label them as loved one, stranger, and adversary, considering what's your dynamic and resilient relationship with all human beings in this moment. And what if it's possible that your whatever level of engagement you have with these loved ones, strangers, and adversaries, that it activates them, in them, a deeper level of civic engagement that could actually eventually call in the highest principles for all human beings, all beings of respect, dignity, belonging, freedom, and collaboration. What if miracles can happen in this moment? And I bring in something kind of spooky to say miracles, but what if a miracle is simply something that is statistically improbable or impossible, but it happens anyway? How can we be miracle makers that what is statistically improbable actually can happen anyway? Where does that start? And with that aspiration and inspiration for fierce hope, I invite you to take a full, fierce breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. Seeing this inspiration being lit up in people's hearts for these highest common human values and principles, allow these human beings to flow into your heart as you bring your awareness back to those in this meditation circle from your center and from your heart. And checking in with those in this meditation circle. How are you doing? How is this practice for you? Just with an awareness. Opening your heart to that question. And with honor and respect, allow those in this meditation circle to flow into your heart as you bring your awareness back to your personal, to your surroundings, the room you're in, the space you're in. Taking what you have just generated and let's now anchor that into this present moment in here and now in your acupuncture point on the planet. With gratitude for your surroundings, allow that to flow into your heart as you bring your awareness back to yourself. And as you now, from your center and your heart, connect with yourself, in what way are you in a dynamic and resilient relationship with yourself? And how can you activate more of that for your highest cause, your highest values, for your well-being? And taking a moment to acknowledge what we've just generated here with the energy of this practice. Allow that energy to flow into every cell of your body, activating the resilient dynamism of every cell of your body. Allowing this energy to flow into your organs, nurturing, healing. Seeping into your nervous system, the energetic of this, the feeling of this, to remember this as you walk into the world. And as a way to close this practice, let's take one final breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. And use this moment, a crucial moment of taking this inner practice to now bridge it with your outer world as you slowly open your eyes and look around in the room. Think about what's outside of the room. Think about what's outside of your neighborhood. Think about what's outside of your city, what's outside of your country, what's out and the globe. Shake the body, stretch the body. Great. So we started with our motivation. We had a discussion. We did our practice, and now we have a moment to reflect. Anybody want to reflect on the practice or anything else that came up with you with what we were discussing? Mika?
Yes. In the start of the meditation, you always say, remember your body feeling held. And Deborah said, maybe you only have to make one phone call. But when we do this meditation, I can feel not only my body is held, but I can hold much more bodies. And then I can hold space for all that bodies. And then I don't make a phone call, maybe tomorrow, but this is what I can do every moment. And when it is very easy to do it with loved ones, well, I love to hold them. And with strangers, I could feel today there is more space for more strangers. And that is maybe my phone call for today.
Beautiful. Thank you. You're just speaking to why we do this practice every time, right? So the more we do it, the deeper we drop in, the more we embody it. And by doing that, by actually bringing it in and integrating, we can expand our capacity out.
Yes.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'm learning more about how to hold people without touching them, because I am a toucher and I am a hugger, and I'm reminded again and again and again that particularly where we are in this moment in time with a lot of nervous systems that are off the charts, that my desire to reach out and touch someone can be a very good intention and can have a very different landing. So I've just been, wow, something just came up saying, confirm your speaking language. It sounds like you might have switched to a different language. Please update if you want to speak Dutch. Wow.
Okay.
Of course I want to speak Dutch. Are you kidding me? The only
Natuurlijk,
thing
ga
I know
gewoon.
in Dutch is zelf mededoken. And I think I kind of made that up. But anyway.
No, it's good.
But I'm aware I just spent a lot of time in the big fat state of Texas and in a lot of different energies and mega churches, because my niece just graduated from a Christian counseling grad program. Anyway, so I was in the midst of a lot of people that I'm not accustomed to being with because I live in Boston. And so I was using a lot of eye and heart contact to connect with people and almost to like offer out, you belong, you belong, you belong, because I think that belonging has gotten hijacked and manipulated, and that's part of the reason why people are doing what they're doing, is to belong. And so anyway, it's been my new practice to be in offering out belonging and care and love without touching others.
Wow. For those of us who know Shelley, we know that's a big practice. That's remarkable, Shelley. Wow.
Doing my best.
I'm sure you are. You are, of course, you're doing your best. It's all you can do, really.
Mhm,
And yeah, that's you're stretching into it. Yeah,
Mhm, mhm.
beautiful.
The other thing that I was going to add is that I've been playing also with the image and the understanding of beneficent rivers, that there are waves of love and compassion and Christ energy or whatever of like deity, Avalokiteshvara, like what are those energies that are always here and always available? And it's our practice to kind of tap into those to find the resilience for ourselves and each other in order to add something to what's happening in the field of what seems to be quite a bit of malevolence that I'm seeing. So.
And
Thank you.
one of the things that I'm struck by is how many people I see on the street who, when I smile back. The pre-COVID period is starting to recover, I think. And that strangers, when I smile, stop and want to talk. So the invitation to connect is beginning to change, I think.
Well, I think you know. I think you just gave us proof. So I would say you know. Deborah, did you? Yeah.
Something that I've been playing with is wearing a button that says defend democracy. And it's big enough and the letters are big enough that it's pretty legible from a bit of a distance. And watching what happens when you walk around being an open declaration. And it has been so much fun because what I did was I bought a bunch of them. And when somebody says, I like your button, then I ask them, if you had a button like this, would you wear it every time you go out in public? And if the answer is yes, I reach into my pocket and hand them a button.
Great.
And so there's something about just my pleasure in doing that, obviously, but there's also this thing of what if more and more people are walking around in the declaration? Because you don't know who anybody is when you're out at the store or at the wherever. But if more and more people are willing in this non-controversial, for most people, way to declare, to
Yeah.
declare. So that's been one of my fun practices lately.
Well, I love, I know you, and I know I love the fact that it also brings you joy, and that's the way it should be. That's how we remain sustainable and healthy in this process. And that's what I'm speaking to, is that let's use our creativity, creative social activism. And that's a brilliant way of getting, a starting point of civic engagement. Beautiful. Thank you. Barbara, are you talking?
I wondered whether Deborah could give us the link so we could all get the button.
I got it from Amazon
Oops.
and they come from China. What can I do?
Uh-oh. You outed her. You outed her.
But what I found was this. I tried Etsy and there is very little stuff out there that's already made. I also actually wear a very large banner on my back that says choose democracy. Um, but, for those of you who don't know, I live in an area that went 3-1 for Trump. So it's rural, it's gun-toting, it's, this is not the most hospitable place for me to be doing that sort of thing.
And
But
you're doing
yeah, I'm wishing I could just, but I can't. Where are the buttons?
Is that John back there? Oh, hey, John. Thought I saw you
No.
back there.
Okay, so if I can't see myself now. There we go. If
Pull away a little bit or no? Okay, yeah.
it's not working at all. So if you go to Amazon, oh, almost. There we go. If you go to Amazon, you see this button. They are extraordinarily inexpensive. So beyond the shipping, they're inexpensive. And so because they were so inexpensive, I went back and ordered 60 more. So we'll see how this goes, but
That's enough. Yeah. I mean, that you're doing, you're doing something and you'll see where it goes. That's the beauty of it, right? The
that's
emergence of it.
fun because you
Yeah.
don't know.
Right.
And by the same token, I have acquaintances, friends who have really questioned the value of getting involved or have talked about their fear. I mean, serious fear of getting involved. And I just tell them what I've noticed and what's happened for me. And every time we do one every Saturday in the nearest regular town. Every Saturday we're out there for an hour with our signs for a honk and wave. And every time I've had that conversation, the next time there's a honk and wave, my friends are there that I've spoken to during the week. And it's not about me telling them what they ought to do, or it's just talking about, yeah, I have those same fears too. I've noticed that in my body, blah, blah, blah. And what I feel after I've been to one of those, one of the rallies, one of the demonstrations, is I feel like I've taken a refreshing shower. Something gets washed off of me.
Yeah.
It's good stuff. My
It is
battery's
good stuff.
dying. I might lose you.
Thank you. Thank you, Deborah. All right. So, George, did you want to say something? We need to wrap up. Did you want to say something?
Very quickly, I just watched an interview of a reporter who went around South Dakota talking to people. And basically, the one that really stuck with me is the person said, my neighbors were fundamentally good people. This, again, it was 70% Trump. It's going to take them some time to realize they made a mistake and admit they made a mistake.
That there's midwifing in that, right? That's a midwifing. That's a doula process, you could say, on some level. There's compassion in that. There's fierce compassion in that. All right, so I'm sending some links. I don't want to. I think that Deborah's movement. It's. I think you need to follow it, and we need to get your button. However, you could always get an Occupy Here T-shirt. That's also something. And so there's a link there. If you want, or mug, where it's a heart that says Occupy Here. It's another thing. Deborah's is more direct to the point and probably cheaper. And but
We can get lots of them and give them away when people admire them.
that's true. That's true. Yeah, that's true. And here are other links. If you want to make a donation for this, we don't initially ask for money for this. You make a donation to the Fear Civility Project, which is what's a nonprofit that's fostering this work around the world now. So the link is there, and there are other links for my books, to get on the newsletter, to get a mailing list for the newsletter, to find out about events, and our social media links as well. So feel free to copy those. And let's just do a quick dedication of this. That may the energies that we've generated here spark in each and every one of us a sense of, what can I do today? What little thing can I do today? Just the curiosity, just the questions enough right now. All right, thank you, everyone. Thank you again for being here, and stay in touch. If anything comes up, let me know. Hope to see you next month. Feel free to tell people about this, and mostly take care of yourselves.
And thank you for stopping in different places around the globe, lighting the spark over and over again.
Thank you.
Yes,
Thank you.
yes, yes.
Thank you all. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.